Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have George Kailas, CEO of Prospero, to discuss how AI is changing the playing field for retail investors. George, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
You got it. I know you have an interesting background. Tell us more about how you got into AI 13 years ago.
Well, it starts a lot before that. I actually started investing when I was in 7th grade and really had an early career in finance. And this is kind of the actualization of a long desire to make the financial markets a more fair place. And that started me in value investing. I worked for Bruce Greenwald at Columbia when I was 16 years old. Started in value investing, learned a lot about that. And I actually turned to AI when I was, as a value investor, too frequently finding out that I didn't have all the information. And I started looking towards AI to give me answers on what I would call the underlying market equations. And a lot of them, I think, are found within the options market. So it was a very natural transition first into AI to find those underlying equations. And then back to my original goal of thinking that a major part of why I started early was to make the financial markets more fair. And I thought that the extension of that was then taking the technology that I used to discover those underlying markets, underlying equations, and then make it as easy for retail investors to understand as possible. And that's where we are today.
So how is AI changing the playing field for retail investors?
Well, I think the important thing that I always like to start out, and I spoke at Finimize last week and said a similar thing, so sorry to the repeat viewers. But I think the first thing that retail investors have to understand is that AI isn't magic. And that the example that I always use, and it's a little shocking to people sometimes, which is that, nobody complains when they're in coach and people are flying first class or private jets. So when people say the markets are manipulated, when they say, it's controlled and they have no chance, I say that that's a lot of retail investors having an unrealistic view of fairness, because those trades are just being transported in different ways for institutions than you get as an everyday person. So in order for AI to change the landscape for retail investors, they have to understand what they can and can't do. And I think, that's a big part of how Prospero helps you. But the example that I use is retail investors need to understand that they're playing in the market with giants and robots and giant robots. And if you don't want to get stepped on, you have to use tools like Prospero, which are great tools to analyze and visualize quickly. Our metrics update every 3 minutes. See what institutions are doing. Use that information to get smarter, to see where they're going, instead of trying to face them in battle, which you're going to get stepped on. I suggest what Prospero and some other really good tools are doing are helping you walk in the shadows of giants. And there's so much more potential to do that today. When I first broke into value investing 20 years ago, it was an impenetrable fortress. There was business being done, just people on Wall Street calling each other up, on the golf course, everything that you hear about. Now with institutions' dependence on alternative data, real-time credit card swipes, camera data, satellite info, web traffic data, all that actually makes them dependent on retail information. So that gives us a chance to get the power back, because we can see the paths of that data and where it's going, and it opens up the potential for a lot of different tools. And I think we saw that with GameStop and AMC. We saw retail leading institutions leading more behavior. And that's the power that we now have through the fact that we control alternative data. And that's really a lot what Prospero is trying to do, teaming up with retail investors to use that data together to get better results for all of us.
So with all the new AI tech that's out there today, how does someone who doesn't have a technical background or something similar to yours determine what tools will actually be effective?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's really, really important for to be realistic and to reiterate what I'm saying. If you see a company claiming to be able to win a nonlinear equation competition with Bridgewater and Renaissance Technologies or whatever, at best, they're uninformed. At worst, they're grifters. Because this is the example that I really like to use, which is that, Bridgewater, Renaissance, they could lose $100 million in a day and not bat an eye. a lot of these startups haven't even reached $100 million in funding. And, there's billions of dollars spent on alternative data, years of institutional knowledge, huge engineering teams. So you have to ask yourself, why would someone be able to compete in a nonlinear equation competition with, say, Bridgewater or Renaissance or anything like that? So you have to look for the types of things I'm talking about. You have to look for ways to leverage technology to more see what institutions are doing, understand what they're doing, because at the end of the day, they make most of the investments, most of the trades. There's no way to change that. So you have to be smart about what can help you try to be as smart as them, not beat them, because you won't beat them. And any tools claiming that they can beat them in a head-on battle, those tools are the tools you want to avoid.
How have you been able to leverage data from Nasdaq within the AI-driven platform?
Well, I mean, we are overhauling our some of the price targets data that we're getting from you, an ARPT data set, some of the price, like some of the other pricing data. I actually really want to, I actually am very excited about using some of the level 2 data later, but we are integrating more and more of Nasdaq's data to make our intelligence smarter, faster than new equity data that we're getting. We're about to get some new price data in our app, some new analytics around that, because we haven't even had price in our app, but it's coming because of our partnership with Nasdaq now. So not only am I really excited about what's being done in the present, I also am excited about the future with Nasdaq.
We spoke about the retail investor. How is AI changing investment advisory?
Well, I think that there's a lot more. I think what it's creating is lower fee structures, which are great, because the more that these things can be automated, the harder and harder it is to upcharge for things that humans can no longer do better. And I think there's like a lot of, the kinds of things that Vanguard has been doing for years to lower their fees, their automations, their tax efficiencies, a lot of things I still think, and there's some human elements of our business, and we don't remove the human elements from it, but there's a lot of things that can and should be automated, and are no longer, those fees should and are decreasingly being passed along to the customer. And I think that that is a really important thing. And I think anytime you're looking at fees that are closer to 1%, in advisory, or, I'd say anything, over 0.25%, are starting to send out alarm bells for me this year. Unless you're talking about like a hedge fund, something very actively managed that you trust, that's a whole different category. But if we're talking about RIA, automated advisory, things like that, that's a great thing that's happening, making it cheaper and cheaper for the customer. And it should, because these things are becoming more and more automated.
And finally, what are you looking forward to in 2024? What's next?
Oh, I mean, there's so many things I'm looking forward to in terms of, it looks like the market's turning around a bit, although I really hope we have tackled the inflation monster fully. Prospero's got some really exciting stuff. We're working on some technologies to show the direction of the market and the probability that it'll be up or down, 1 day, 2 days forward. We've got a lot more automated kind of trade alerts coming through the pipeline. We've got a new way to analyze and understand sectors. So you can find some ideas on AI companies. You can look at, say, what are AI companies that are high in, say, our upside breakout rating, semantic search like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great year for the market, a great year for Prospero. Excited to do more with Nasdaq in 2024 as well.
All right, George, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks a lot, Jill.